Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know how this works. We dive into something substantial, pull out the key bits for you, save you the time.
Get right to the good stuff.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something really interesting. A detailed, 10,000-word exploration of a hypothetical movie.
Oh, okay. Hypothetical.
Yeah. The 2025 film Sinners, supposedly directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan.
Coogler and Jordan again. That pairing is always interesting.
Right. But this isn't a review, obviously. It's more like looking at the blueprint.
A deep dive into the idea of the film based on this text.
Precisely. Our job today is to pull out the most compelling bits about this potential film. The themes, the story, the creative forces described.
It's a bit different. Examining something that doesn't actually exist yet gives us a chance to explore the potential,
Yeah, like reading the architect's plans. So let's start with part one of this rundown, setting the stage, the premise, the players involved.
Okay.
It frames Sinners as a character-driven drama,
Right.
really digging into moral complexity, not just simple good versus evil.
Which sounds very Coogler, doesn't it? Thinking about his previous work.
Totally. The source hints at a few potential core conflicts. Maybe an ex-con trying to go straight.
Or like a troubled detective, maybe. Someone facing a tough choice.
Yeah, or even a whole community grappling with some kind of shared guilt. The main thing seems to be internal struggles, relationships.
Less about external action, more about the psychology.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Which leads straight into the themes, right? Redemption is mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Justice too.
And forgiveness, forgiving others, forgiving yourself, and just human fallibility. The fact that we all mess up.
Those are heavy themes. Redemption and justice, especially in a Coogler film, often tie into wider societal questions too.
Good point. Which of those feels like it might be the main engine, do you think, based on that description?
It's hard to say definitively, but the redemption arc feels central, especially if it focuses on one main character, like an ex-con or a compromised detective. But woven into that, the justice theme, maybe critiquing the system or exploring what justice even means, that feels very plausible too. It's probably a mix.
And the rundown talks a lot about Ryan Coogler's vision. Social relevance, character focus, emotional intensity, authenticity.
Yeah, hallmarks of his work. Fruitvale Station, Creed, obviously Black Panther, they all have that.
But this sounds maybe darker, more ambiguous than some of those. The source suggests Sinners could be him exploring that territory more deeply.
It could be a more intimate look at moral failings, perhaps.
Well,
The text mentions his visual storytelling, how he gets performances, the thematic depth.
right, how he uses the camera, gets those really raw performances.
Applying that skill set to something potentially grimier, more morally gray, that's an interesting prospect.
Then there's Michael B. Jordan, described as magnetic in the lead.
Well, he usually is.
True, it highlights his, physicality, charisma, but also his emotional range.
He can definitely portray that inner conflict.
The rundown floats possibilities for his character. Parolee, detective, maybe even a priest.
A priest. Interesting.
Yeah, but whatever the role, the expectation is intensity, nuance, vulnerability, that physical presence he has.
It sets up a potentially complex protagonist. Someone grappling with, sin, right? And whether redemption is even possible for them, Jordan can nail that duality.
The source also mentions the supporting cast being crucial. Specifically names Miles Caton in a hypothetical role.
Oh, okay. Any specifics on his character?
Not definitively. Could be a mentor, maybe a rival, someone from the protagonist's past, adding layers.
Right, someone to bounce off the main character, challenge them, or guide them.
Exactly. The emphasis is just on needing a strong ensemble to make the world feel real.
Absolutely essential in a character drama. You need those relationships to feel authentic. Caton's a strong actor, too, so that adds potential weight.
And finally, for this first section, it touches on genre. Drama at the core, obviously.
But with other flavors mixed in.
Yeah, hints of thrillers, maybe some neo-noir elements for that darker atmosphere.
Neo-noir fits with the moral ambiguity theme. Corruption, disillusionment.
It draws some comparisons, too.
Ugh.
Oddly, from Dusk Till Dawn. But just for the darker human nature aspect, not the tone.
Okay, that's a specific pull.
More expectedly, Coogler's own Fruitvale Station for the realism and social issues.
Makes sense.
And potentially nods to things like Sif the Men Training Day, maybe even Prisoner.
Those suggest a certain grit, yeah, and moral compromise, especially Training Day.
So, putting it all together,
Yeah.
intense, character-focused, morally complex drama with thriller neo-noir touches. Sounds promising.
It paints a compelling picture, definitely. Lots of potential there.
Okay, let's move into the second part of the rundown. The narrative, spine, plot, and structure.
Right, how the story might actually unfold.
It starts with the inciting incident. Whatever kicks things off, it's meant to force the protagonist to confront their past.
The catalyst needs to be significant.
The source suggests a few types. Maybe a violent crime pulls in a troubled detective.
Or the protagonist getting out of prison, like you mentioned. That's a natural starting point for confronting the past.
Or even just a shocking revelation that shatters their world. Whatever it is, it sets the conflict and the journey in motion.
Disrupts the status quo, forces them onto a new path. Self-discovery, maybe redemption, maybe something else.
And from there, the rising action sounds like it involves, well, things getting worse before they get better.
Usually the way it goes.
Uncovering corruption, facing threats, battling internal struggles, building suspense, basically.
Pushing the protagonist. Testing their limits, forcing them to make difficult choices as the stakes get higher.
Yeah, it sounds like that pressure cooker environment we talked about. Both external and internal pressure.
And that naturally leads into the character arcs. The rundown emphasizes transformation, growth.
Moral awakenings, loss of innocence, self-discovery, the whole spectrum.
And it loops back to the supporting characters here. Mentors, tempters, mirrors, how they influence that arc.
Right. They aren't just there. They actively shape the protagonist's journey.
A mentor offers one path, a tempting figure another. Seeing aspects of themselves reflected in others forces introspection. It makes the change feel earned.
So, woven into this plot structure are the thematic threads. The source mentions quite a few.
We touched on some already. Sin, obviously.
The weight of guilt, the search for grace,
The corrupting influence of power is in there too.
and the fragility of hope. It's a lot to juggle. Which ones feel like they'd be front and center?
Given the title Sinners and the premise, sin and guilt seem unavoidable as core pillars.
Right.
But the search for grace, for redemption, provides that necessary counterpoint. It offers the possibility of hope, stops it from being relentlessly bleak. Power and corruption could tie into the plot, maybe the antagonist's motivation or a systemic issue.
It sounds like they'd be deeply intertwined.
Almost certainly. You can't really explore redemption without dealing with sin and guilt first.
The rundown also talks about pacing, finding a balance.
Between what?
Between, like, a deliberate pace for character moments and exploring themes.
Letting things breathe.
And then maybe a faster, more suspenseful pace for the thriller parts. And editing is key to managing that rhythm.
Absolutely. Pacing dictates the audience's experience. Slowing down allows connection. Speeding up builds tension. Getting that balance right is crucial for the film's impact.
And then the structure builds towards the climax, described as a moment of reckoning.
A point of no return.
Could be a violent showdown, a huge moral choice, or some kind of profound revelation, forces a final decision.
Where all the threads converge. The protagonist has to face the consequences, make that definitive move.
And after that, the resolution. The source suggests it might offer closure, but maybe not neat answers.
Could be hopeful, could be tragic.
Or ambiguous, designed to make you think afterwards.
Which can be very effective, right? An ending that lingers makes you keep turning it over in your mind. Avoids easy, simple answers for complex problems.
So structurally, it sounds like a journey. Catalyst, rising tension, transformation, climax, and a potentially thought-provoking resolution.
A solid blueprint for a compelling narrative, if executed well.
Okay, let's shift gears to the third part, character studies. Really digging into the human element, starting with Jordan's protagonist.
Getting into the specifics of who this person might be.
The rundown stresses complexity. It highlights the importance of their background, upbringing, past experiences, relationships, trauma.
All the things that make someone who they are, the foundation. You need that to understand their motivations, their flaws.
Exactly, and it explores those motivations. Are they noble or selfish? Altruistic or self-serving? Probably a mix, right?
Almost always a mix in complex characters. That's what makes them relatable. Nobody's purely good or purely bad.
And it talks about balancing flaws, weaknesses, vices with strengths, like resilience or courage. That push and pull.
That's the core of relatable humanity on screen, isn't it? Seeing the imperfections alongside the potential for good.
Yeah.
It lets the audience invest.
Then there's the inner turmoil. Guilt, doubt, maybe addiction, alienation, and how they cope or fail to cope.
The internal landscape, that's where the real drama often lies. Seeing that struggle makes the character feel real.
And tracing that potential arc.
Yeah.
Change, learning, growth, or maybe they succumb. Redemption isn't guaranteed.
Right. The tension lies in whether they can change, whether they will overcome their demons. That's the journey we watch.
And regarding Jordan's performance again, it emphasizes physicality, voice, expressions, conveying that inner turmoil non-verbally.
Making the internal visible. That's the actor's craft. Jordan's very good at that. Showing you what's going on underneath without spelling it out. It builds empathy.
Then the supporting characters. The rundown makes it clear they're not just plot devices.
They need to enrich the world, flesh out the themes.
It mentions archetypes. Mentors, antagonists, allies, figures from the past, each serving a function relative to the protagonist.
Provides context, conflict, perspective. A mentor offers wisdom, an antagonist challenges beliefs. Allies offer support. Past figures reveal history. They create a more layered world.
And it circles back to Miles Caton again. His potential role, whatever it is, seen as impactful.
Right.
And just the general importance of good performances and real chemistry across the whole ensemble.
It elevates everything. Believable interactions make the world immersive. The dynamic between the actors is key to making relationships feel real.
Ultimately, the rundown says, these characters embodied the themes. They make the ideas tangible.
Yeah, the protagonist might be the struggle for redemption personified. The antagonist, corruption. The mentor, hope. Makes abstract concepts relatable through human stories.
Exactly. Okay, let's pivot to the fourth part. Cinematic craft. How Coogler might actually make this film visually and sonically.
The directorial choices, the look and feel.
It starts with Coogler's overall vision realism, emotional intensity, social consciousness, dynamic storytelling. We know this.
His signature style.
But it asks how Sinners, with his darker themes, fits into his evolution as a filmmaker.
It suggests maybe a deepening of those commitments, applying his realistic, emotionally intense style to more morally murky waters. It mentions his visual storytelling again, camera, composition, movement.
How he uses those tools.
Yeah.
The rundown then breaks down cinematography specifics, visual style realistic or stylized.
Camera angles and composition, how they show power dynamics, intimacy.
Lighting and color setting the mood, telling the story visually.
And camera movement, creating energy, affecting pace. It's all part of the language.
How the film looks is fundamental. For a film about darkness and morality, those choices about light, shadow, framing, they'll be huge.
They shape our perception, our emotional response, often subconsciously.
Editing gets focused too. Pacing, rhythm, transitions between scenes.
Montage sequences, maybe. Building suspense through cross-cutting.
Yeah, all those techniques. How editing shapes the emotional impact. The invisible art, but crucial.
It's where the film finds its final shape, its flow. Controls how we experience the narrative, builds and releases tension.
And finally, music and sound design. It even flows Ludwig Göransson as a possible composer.
Makes sense. They collaborate often. He understands Coogler's vision.
How the score complements the story and visuals, how sound effects, ambient noise, dialogue create realism and atmosphere.
The whole soundscape.
And that interplay between diegetic sound stuff, the characters hear, and non-diegetic sound, like the score.
Music is so powerful for emotion. Score can build dread, uplift, underscore sadness. Sound design immerses you in the world, creates tension. Göransson could definitely create something evocative for these themes.
Okay, so we've covered the potential look and sound. Now, the final part of the rundown, thematic resonance, really exploring the core ideas.
Getting to the heart of what the film might be about.
It starts with the weight of sin, how the film might define it beyond just religion, exploring different kinds of moral failings.
And moral ambiguity, no clear heroes or villains, that seems key.
Consequences, personal, social, and moral responsibility. Is it individual choice or societal forces? Free will.
That's deep territory. Moving beyond simple definitions, looking at the complexity of wrongdoing and accountability in the real world. The ambiguity part is really interesting, forcing the audience to grapple with it.
Then it moves to the pursuit of redemption. What does that look like in this story? Forgiveness, atonement, real change.
The struggle involved, it's never easy, right?
Right. And the role of forgiveness, giving it, receiving it, forgiving yourself, and the price of redemption. What sacrifices are needed?
That idea of redemption being earned, not just given, it often involves facing the consequences, making amends, a real internal shift. Exploring that struggle can be incredibly powerful.
The rundown also brings up faith and doubt.
Another layer.
Is faith present, absent? Is there a struggle with doubt? What's the role of spiritual guidance, helpful, harmful?
And can morality exist without faith? Or is faith presented as essential?
Adds a whole philosophical dimension, potentially. How characters find meaning or grapple with its absence, especially when facing moral crises.
It could really deepen the character conflicts and the overall thematic exploration.
And finally, social commentary. The rundown suggests the film might explore issues like racial or social justice,
Crime and punishment, the justice system, rehabilitation.
addiction, mental health, power and corruption, even globalization or modernity's impact.
Which, given Coogler's track record, seems very likely, doesn't it?
Absolutely, weaving these larger societal issues into the personal stories.
It grounds the individual struggles in a broader context, makes the film feel relevant, urgent maybe, exploring systemic issues alongside personal moral failings.
So it seems this rundown envisions a film packed with heavy themes, complex characters, and potentially powerful social commentary, all wrapped in Coogler's distinct cinematic style.
A very ambitious picture, definitely.
Right. So bringing this hypothetical deep dive to a close, it really does sound like Sinners, based on this description, has the potential to be, well, quite something. Complex, thought-provoking.
Yeah, the ingredients describe the themes, the character focus, Coogler's direction, Jordan's performance. They point towards a potentially impactful film, emotionally and intellectually.
So, for everyone listening, thinking about everything we've just unpacked,
Yeah.
the themes, the character types, the style, what part of this hypothetical film jumps out at you the most? What feels most intriguing?
And why do you think that element could be particularly powerful on screen? It's interesting to consider.
You know, this whole exercise, looking at a film's potential based on a detailed description like this, it's a good way to think about what really goes into making a film resonate, isn't it?
Absolutely. It encourages you to look deeper than just the plot at the character work, the themes, the craft, all the layers that create meaning.
And maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. Thinking about this film's potential focus on sin and redemption, what do you believe is the true measure of a person's character? Something to chew on.